This is Beyond a Reasonable Doubt with your hosts, Mark Garrigus and Adam Carolla.
Yeah, get it on. Got to get on. No choice but to get on. Mandate, get it on. And welcome to the best 15 minutes or so in the universe. It's Beyond a Reasonable Doubt. I'm Adam Carolla. That's Mark. Hard out. Small window. Garrigus coming from his office downtown, right?
Last week you came up with, I told my son Jake, my favorite nickname of you.
Hard out, soft taco, Garrigus. That's right. God damn it.
And by the way, I was on my way to the studio. I had packed up some soft tacos. I had packed up some chicken sandwiches, and I was bringing them to you because we just did an event here. And Boring Cop's car was parked behind me without the key in it. And my best laid plans went awry.
Well, we won't live in the past. We'll talk about what's breaking. There's some news breaking. Well, so says Gary.
Breaking right now. Right, the jury was out. Susan Nicholas tried, who I know and think the world of. She was representing the Trump organization in the New York Supreme Court, and the jury was out for a day, and then they came back and convicted the Trump organization on the fraud. And I will tell you, I've talked with various people who I have a lot of respect for, and they think, I will tell you, there's a couple of things that are at play. First, you corrected me, Gary, Ye, not Ye, right? Ye?
Correct.
The Ye and Fuentes dinner, which alienated a previous constituency who had been very supportive of Trump. And a lot of people said, well, that was, the GOP was turning. Then you have this comment about terminating the Constitution. Now you have this conviction, and it feels like there is a somewhat of a turn. And then you combine that with appointing the special counsel that Merrick Garland did, and the Manhattan DA's office bringing in the former number 3 in the U.S. Attorney's Office onto the state side. And you have a perfect storm of, legal defense, so to speak. Nobody should underestimate having to deal with the civil, which is what they just got. They the
Trump organization,
Trump organization, the state where they brought in a special counsel, and the special counsel on the federal. So this is quite a. There's no way to downplay this, and I know that if you read some of the comments, you'll see people saying, "Oh, this is nothing." Blah 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 blah. No, it's something, and there's no way he's feeling good about this, and there's no way that that he's saying, "Oh, this is great," because this is a axis of problems for the former.
Certainly been a bad 2 weeks for Trump, that's for sure.
Absolutely. And by the way, we can talk about, and I think you probably would want to, what we talked about last week, which precipitated the terminating of the Constitution, which is something you've been arguing for a while, is that the electoral interference was the fact that the Hunter Biden October surprise New York Post story was suppressed, and the Twitter files that have been apparently looked at by Matt Taibbi and Barry Weiss, I think also, and that have been revealed. You and I talked last week about whether there was going to be governmental, because that was where you crossed the Rubicon, so to speak, if the government was involved. And I didn't think, by the way, that there was anything that would show the government was involved. But you can make a cogent argument that the FBI, as an arm of the government, was involved.
Well, the fact that the FBI had the laptop for 11 months and was still trying to vet it, and the 51 experts all signed the document that said earmarks of Russian collusion, that, while it doesn't suggest possibly overt and direct, it sort of suggests a at least a tacit agreement that the FBI wouldn't vigorously go after Hunter Biden or Joe Biden. And I think what America is responding to is when it comes to going after Trump, they seem to have all the energy and vigor in the world. And when it comes to looking into Hunter Biden's laptop, they've kind of put that on the back burner. And so I guess what we're looking for is whatever the vigor you have for Trump, why don't you apply that to Hunter Biden and Joe Biden? And if you're not, why aren't you applying it to them? And this seems to be like you're almost playing for one team and not the other. But I had a concept, and I wrote it down today, and I'm curious what you think of it. Now, what's going on is there was the Matt Taibbi and Elon Musk sort of dump, and one side is saying aha, and the other side is saying nothing to see here, and it's pretty easy. And no one's even, besides Fox News and a couple other outlets, it hasn't really been vigorously reported on. And I always kind of say, when people say, why aren't they reporting on it? Well, it's essentially they would be reporting on themselves. So in their involvement with it, a lot of news outlets, so they're not going to vigorously report on it, although there is some breaking news in this department that Gary alerted me to just before the mics heated up that we'll get into in a second, which may change the game a little bit here. But I have an overall synopsis of the current time we're living in, and I'm curious what Mark thinks. Trump, because of what he elicits in other people, because of the ire that he brings out in many, there's not a lot of people that are agnostic on Trump. Some people love him, some people hate him, but it really brings it out in people. Trump, because of how enthusiastically despised he was by the left and journalists and probably the FBI and probably big tech, he is essentially single-handedly sort of compromised, if not ruined, these legacy entities. So he took the media and turned them into screaming shrews and fucked up their reporting on everything because they were so enthusiastically against Trump that it sort of kept them, it didn't permit them to do their jobs. You know, you have the media going, we haven't vetted the laptop. And my answer would be, well, then go vet it. But they didn't do their due diligence. His anger got them so exercised that they ceased to kind of do the job that we all thought they formerly did. And thus people sort of lost faith in them. So when people talk about CNN or MSNBC or the New York Times, people are sort of like, yeah, well, we know what they're doing now. They're doing the bidding of the Democratic Party. And they all hate Trump. I don't believe anything they say. The FBI went down that road, too. I mean, they've been compromised like I've never heard in the last, year, where people are like, I'm not sure I believe what the FBI is saying. The Silicon Valley and these platforms, Twitter and Facebook and beyond, they've all been compromised. Like Trump essentially angered and animated these people to such an extent that they compromised their brands.
Well, it's interesting you say that. Gary, I sent you, I think, something where there was a declaration by somebody, and I think it was Twitter's then head, who then was deposed. And what was in the declaration did not match the testimony. And the reason I bring that up is because you would think that would lead, if you're a journalist, you'd want to say discrepancy. That would be the headline, if you will. And to follow up on your point, and one of my great frustrations with the current kind of journalistic milieu, you're arguing that that there's an exposure of a bias that becomes so overwhelming that you tend to shoot the messenger, literally. And the reason you do that, we've talked about it before. If I read something and then I see Breitbart, or if I read something and I see that it's MSNBC, or if I read something and it's CNN, I already have in my mind, oh, I've got to kind of shift the prism of the way I'm looking at this. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of where we have devolved. And that's really that's really a scary kind of thing, because then, I mean, it's scary and I can see it both ways. In one sense, it forces you to be critical in your thinking. In another sense, you're almost dismissive of what outlet it is because you think or you assume they have an agenda. Is that?
Well, yeah, but what I'm saying is a little more nuanced in that we always have known what Breitbart is and what their angle is. And then on the other side, you might look at the Young Turks network and go, I get it. That's what they're doing. Or HuffPo. So you got Breitbart over here and you got HuffPo over there.
And by the way, why did the Young Turks get away with having an Armenian co-host? And they're named after the group that slaughtered the Armenians during the genocide. But that's another discussion. So anyway.
I concur. I don't like those people, but they made it clear what their mission statement is, and so did Breitbart. And to that extent, Fox made it kind of, you're clear what Fox does, you're clear what MSNBC does. Like, I get it. But the thing about the Hunter Biden laptop story, now we all agreed on that, but what we didn't agree on is NPR and the Los Angeles Times and the New York Times and NBC and CBS and all the major news outlets who we thought were kind of playing it by the middle and would tell us if this laptop was real or not, or wouldn't try to suppress it or spin it. We looked at them as a third category. And so the real eye-opener here is it used to be Breitbart's over here and HuffPo's over there, and then ABC, NBC, and all the major newspapers. They're somewhere in the middle, and I guess we can believe what the BBC and Reuters has to say. What's becoming clear is that all those middle entities were, in fact, a lot closer to HuffPo than they were, certainly than to Breitbart. And so they actually did the bidding of the Democratic Party as well. And that's the part that's the troubling part. I don't think it's HuffPo versus Breitbart. That my kid knows. It's everyone else who's sort of caught in the middle and thinking that these other entities are straight shooters and don't have a strong leaning one way or the other, that secretly, and for that matter, a lot of big tech. You know, we go, Breitbart's over here, HuffPo's over there, and then there's Twitter. That's just a town square. We didn't know they were with HuffPo. That's kind of what we're finding out now.
Well, yeah, and that, I suppose, is a valid distinction, because what they're showing in the, you know, a lot of the breathlessness about the Twitter files was the government involved? Was the government doing this? Was the government doing that? No, it doesn't appear, other than the FBI, that was the concerted effort. What I think, to borrow your phrase, the more nuanced look is what was happening with content, what the new term is content moderation, which there's somebody sitting in a cubicle somewhere who's determining what's going to get amplified, what's not going to get amplified, and making decisions like that. That's I think the takeaway, at least for me, from the Twitter files.
I got to tell you personally and anecdotally, in the last few weeks, I picked up like 50,000 Twitter followers, and it was flatline before that. I'd pick up 5, I'd lose 5. I'd pick up 3, I'd lose 2. All of a sudden, I picked up like 50,000 people and little nothing tweets about COVID or vaccines or Gavin Newsom. I go check the next day. It's got 1 million views. These things formerly would have got 56,000 views. It's like, oh, it's 2 million views. You talking shit about the CDC. That's very unusual, very different, not an algorithm I've ever seen before, and something is up. So whatever their former...
That is interesting. Can you link it, at least, it's not even anecdotally, I suppose. Can you link it evidentiary to pre-Elon, post-Elon, which would have been, October 28th?
I can tell you that I've sent out a few tweets that weren't particularly funny or provocative or interesting, but they were just sort of fuck off COVID tweets or Newsom tweets or something like that. Formerly, they would have gotten little to no traction, and it's like, 2 million views or 1 million views, and that's very new. So, again, I don't know if it would hold up in the court of law, maybe in a civil court, but to me, who's been studying the rhythm and the patterns and checking, it's very eye-opening. That much I can say.
I think one time many years ago, I qualified you as an expert on pornography. Do you remember that day?
Yes.
Yeah, and you wildly passed any Vordaer foundational on pornography. I think I could qualify you as an expert on the Twitter ebbs and flows because you pay attention to it. I mean, over the last 2 years, you've talked about kind of cracking the code, so to speak, of what gets traction, what doesn't get traction. But that was when you were talking about 10, 15, 20, sub 100,000 likes or retweets. Now you're talking seven figures.
Yeah, it's different. Something changed. Something definitely, I can't tell you what changed. I can tell you something changed, and it's probably...
you know what I will do as my homework assignment for the big show on Friday? I'm going to take a look at your feed, and I'm going to see if I can see a before and after as to when the content moderators were kind of exiled. And I'll start with the tipping point being October 28th and see if I can develop a pattern. I
can tell you, I would appreciate that. And I can tell you this. I've heard countless stories of people from the conservative side of the aisle say something happened and they just gained a whole bunch more viewers or followers and got a lot more traction and stuff. That's all from the right side of the aisle. I've not heard anybody on the left side of the aisle say that. So
it's funny you mentioned that. I just saw somebody complaining about losing followers, and I think it was on the left side. So I need to do that homework too. I mean, that would be interesting for me to see. And I don't mean to segue away from this, but I was just thinking about tweets because I just read my friend, your friend, Harmeet Dhillon. You see that Harmeet is now challenging for the Republican National Committee chair.
I saw her make that announcement last night. I'm a fan of hers. I find her to have so much integrity, and ultimately that's what we're looking for today. I don't even care if I agree with you anymore. Speaking of that, on the whole Elon Musk dump, there was that email from Ro Khanna, who's the Silicon Valley congressman, and he was like, fellas, this doesn't look right. I don't think you can suppress a story.
That's what I was thinking. I mean, Ro Khanna, they've got an email where Ro Khanna, by the way, if you don't know who he is, I believe his district is up in the Silicon Valley, and he's a very articulate, left-leaning Democrat. And even he was appalled at some of the things that were going on and what they thought was appropriate under the rubric of the First Amendment.
Yeah, and I will I won't forever agree with Ro Khanna. I will forever think that he means what he says and he believes it, because that's all I'm looking for anymore. He said, hey, fellas, this doesn't look like it meets the standard of you taking it down. And he said, I'm as pro-Biden as a guy comes, but I think this is a First Amendment issue. And I go, all right, well, now that guy's intellectually honest. And Harmeet, I feel the same way about.
Let me give you an example of something I read. Maybe Gary can find it while I'm talking. Somebody wrote a column in the Los Angeles Times, and it was sent to me. And it was ransacking, for lack of a better term, Harmeet, and saying, oh, she's this, she's that. And then says there's like a paragraph in this column She even sued the governor over the COVID restrictions. And it was like, she had crossed the line of appropriate. And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, she sued the governor. By the way, I was there with her doing the same thing, and I'm hardly running for the RNC chair. And by the way, little postscript that you'd think maybe this brain dead editor at the LA Times might have put in. She sued the governor. And by the way, she won 3 times at the U.S. Supreme Court and cost the state taxpayers money because they had to pay the legal fees. But they just throw it out there. That's kind of the age that we live in, that you're going to denigrate her for suing the governor and winning 3 cases at the U.S. Supreme Court. There are large law firms that could never claim to win 3 cases of the Supreme Court across 1,000 lawyers in 2 years, let alone Harmeet and her small firm doing it 3 times during COVID in the span of a year.
Well, I'm going to knit her a bottle of champagne and send it over to her office because I'm tickled pink that she's going for that position. All right, Mark, we'll do the big show on Friday, Gary, with lots more details on many of the things we've talked about. You can go to December 15th, Tucson, Arizona, Rialto Theater. Come say hi. And then West Palm Beach, Florida. I'll be doing shows there in February. I think I'm showing up at Tempe, Arizona before that, though, the 16th and 17th, doing live podcast stand-up shows there at the Improv. What do you got, Mark?
I've got Gigi's down in Palm Springs. Go down, say hi to the guys there. If you're in New York City, stop by Dirty Taco, hard out, soft taco, and Prova Pizza. And if you're in downtown LA, stop by Engine Company 28 or Mediterranean Tapas at 10E.
So, till next time, Adam Carolla for Mark, hard out, soft taco, small window, Garrigus, saying mahalo.
Thanks for listening to Beyond a Reasonable Doubt. Stay tuned for more bonus episodes coming soon.